The roaring 40s winds might whip around Flinders Island, but as local farmers know, the combination of mild temperatures and high rainfall makes for lush grazing pastures. Increasingly, the island's attractions are being noticed by outsiders, including a multi-millionaire developer keen to spend more time farming and a family turning a pest animal into a product exciting the country's top chefs. As Fiona Breen discovered, after some initial wariness, long-time locals are embracing change, increasing cattle and sheep numbers and expanding their enterprises.
This rugged, windy island, less than 100 kilometres off Tasmania's northeast tip, is the biggest of the Furneaux Group. A collection of 52 islands stretching across Bass Strait between Tasmania and mainland Australia. An average of 700 millimetres of rain a year helps to produce lush pastures designed to fatten prime beef and lamb. But it's also fattening the local wallabies, and they're breeding fast.
Only eat the best stuff. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, they can pick it off the ground where the sheep and cattle can't get it. So, you know, they get it before the sheep and cattle get to it.
It's a full moon, and Tom Rhodes, one of the best shots on Flinders Island, is hunting wallabies. It's not difficult. There are thousands nibbling away on pasture across the 75-kilometre long island.
Oh, I'd say it's fairly big problem for most farmers. I mean, there's probably not many farmers on the island that haven't got some. You know, I used to shoot on a cull sort of basis for one bloke, and I shot 20,000 on this place in 2 years.
While wallaby is a big problem for farmers on the island, it's proved to be an opportunity for one entrepreneurial family. Wallaby meat could end up taking the number 3 spot on the island's list of exports. The local abattoir, run by newcomers to the island, has found a growing market. Top restaurants in Melbourne and Sydney can't get enough of the meat.
I've been eating it for years and know what it's like and know it's good quality stuff. So, I mean, they're only eating the same as what the sheep and cows are eating around the place, so, and there's nothing wrong with them.
Dave Madden and his son took over the dilapidated Flinders Island abattoir 3 years ago. The mixed species operation is now employing 8 people and operating 7 days a week. The abattoir's running a couple of night shifts a week to work on wallaby. It's the fastest growing product line, making up 20% of the abattoir's throughput.
The wallaby job for us is really in high demand. I mean, what we're doing now is about half of what we should be, so it's growing very, very quickly.
Boxes of wallaby are flown off the island a couple of times a week. The only thing slowing sales at the moment is a lack of qualified shooters. The abattoir needs to put shooters through a TAFE course before they can go hunting.
With the wallaby, we have named the cuts basically the same as beef, so that people understand beef and they understand the wallaby cuts. You've got your fillets, you've got tenderloins, you've got rumps, top sides. Sometimes we do some of the silver sides. So basically when chefs are ordering, they can equate the shape of the product, which is a bit different, but pretty much where it is in relation to at least to what they need for their menus.
It's put a small dent in the island's wallaby numbers. Farmers are also spending thousands on wallaby-proof fencing. One of the biggest and most popular stalls at this year's Flinders Island show is a fencing company's.
Every time I do a gripple joint on long strains, I would do that, every time.
Darren Grace, manager of the island's biggest property, is taking a keen interest. He's installing kilometres of wallaby-proof fencing.
We were just getting hammered by wallabies and certainly wombats, and we really needed to do something because it was certainly affecting our stocking rates.
Makana Park is expanding. Protecting its growing grazing lands is a priority. They've been stocking up and are close to reaching a 5,000 strong herd of cattle. The long-term aim is 10,000.
We've really focused on improving the genetics over the last sort of 3 years. So we've been out there buying the best genetics we can buy, and we've certainly been sourcing those from a couple of places, one in New South Wales and one in Tasmania.
What sort of kilos would they be, Darren?
George, I think they're going to be close to 500. There'd certainly be some...
Money doesn't seem to be an issue. Owner, Melbourne property developer and multi-millionaire George Adams is passionate about Makana Park. He and his family fly in on a private jet several times a month and are becoming familiar faces around the local community.
You hadn't done much farming. Why did you decide to sort of go into this area?
We've been in farming for actually 40 years, but not on a grand scale of this size. So we've had properties surrounding Melbourne for the last 35 years. We have a herd of some 5,000 cows in Melbourne. We were looking to replace and replenish our land holdings that are depleting in Melbourne because of development. So we decided to look all over Australia and find a unique property. We thought that this was one of the most unique areas in Australia for rainfall when we needed it, and also it gave us the potential to develop the land, which is what we do best.
His expansion plans have got some locals a little worried though. Manager Darren Grace is the man on the ground.
Is there enough room on the property?
There won't be enough room on Makana itself. There'll certainly be, as some of our improvements come online, there'll certainly be enough to take us up there, increase those numbers over the next 2 or 3 years. And then would have to look outside of our base we've got already.
Makana Park, is it taking over Flinders?
I wouldn't say it'll be taking over Flinders. I think we're certainly important cog in the wheel for the rest of the community.
His dreams for the 12,000 hectare property are huge. He has a team of people working on a bush conversion project. Hectares are being transformed into grazing land. There's another team working on an irrigation project to support those expanding grazing lands.
We're about 90% through that construction program of drainage and canals. Within the next 3 years we'll be able to flood irrigate some 2,500 hectares here to enable us to double the size of our breeding herds.
A huge drain is being built on the property. When finished, it'll be 3.5 kilometres long. It will eventually divert water out of the surrounding hills to a new irrigation scheme.
It's an ambitious irrigation project. Why did you decide to go in such a big way?
The inspiration came originally when I started in business for myself. I was a drainer, so being able to harness drainage and turn it into a productive use, we thought this was the best opportunity to be able to do it on a grand scale. And over the last 11 years here, we've accomplished to develop some huge deposits of water by using the right hydrologists and using the contours of the land to produce the drainage scheme that we needed to complete my ambition here.
The system will harness huge amounts of groundwater and runoff and hold it in dams. Using gravity and a system of weirs, they'll eventually irrigate up to 4,000 hectares of land without using any fuel.
My ambition is to produce the best quality beef in Australia and have production rates that unheard of. We think that in the next 5 years here we'll have a breeding herd of some 15,000 Angus cows and 20,000 ewes to produce fat lambs.
Once the property is fully developed, George Adams plans to transport his Victorian cattle herds to Flinders Island. He chose Flinders Island for its isolation, lack of disease and lush pastures. But there are disadvantages to island farming, none bigger than that posed by the water that surrounds it. Most of Flinders Island beef and lamb still leaves the island for a mainland Tasmanian abattoir on board this barge. The journey takes up to 12 hours. It adds about $110 a head to the price of the cattle. There's similar costs to those faced by King Islanders since their abattoir closed, but they've managed to secure an extra subsidy, and Flinders Island farmers aren't happy. King Island farmers have been given $30 per head of cattle to offset transport costs for the next 12 months to help them adjust to not having a local abattoir. George Adams says it gives King Island farmers an unfair advantage.
I think that in the mind of the people here, we've always been looked at as the second-grade island, but we are producing 1 in 5 cattle here that come out of Tasmania. And I think we just need a bit more recognition and a bit of an even playing field. If one island gets a subsidy, the other island shouldn't be disadvantaged.
He's not the only one unhappy. At the Flinders Island show, it doesn't take long to find more farmers angry about their neighbour's new subsidy.
In previous years, I've stood here and...
Mayor Carol Cox says most locals feel betrayed.
I think the feeling over the community here is that King and Flinders are both very similar islands in Bass Strait, doing very similar things, producing beef. And it's a bit unfair to target one island with a subsidy and not target the other island with the same assistance.
Like all regional communities, keeping young people is one of Flinders' biggest problems. Scott Anderson broke the cycle. The third-generation Flinders Island farmer returned 20 years ago at the age of 20 to take over the family property. He's one of the farmers that's been buying up nearby smaller lots. He grows out most of his cattle on the island, then sends them to Tasmania for finishing. He says when Flinders Island farmers needed help, the Tasmanian government refused to support them.
We had a rogue shipping operator for 3 years and finally went broke, leaving us high and dry in sort of peak movement season in mid to late spring. And the biggest disappointment for us was that the then minister said, guaranteed that we'd get food to the island and the community would be supported. But he more or less told livestock producers, it's your problem, you fix it. It's not our problem. And then to turn around within 3 years and sort of a straight out $30 subsidy to the King Island producers, well, enjoy it, guys, because, gee, I know we were in really looking for help.
Scott Anderson is typical of the farmers on Flinders Island. Over the past few years, his family's operation has moved away from merino wool production. The Andersons are now 80% beef and 20% prime lamb.
There's always been probably a small dedicated band of lamb producers, but wool was king through till about the mid-90s, and then we've seen quite a dramatic change out of wool or even out of sheep into beef production in the last, sort of late 90s onwards to now. When I came home, a big herd was 250 cows. Now 1,000 cows is nearly quite the norm.
Flinders Island has gone through some good, bad and tragic times. It was a sealer's outpost in the early 18th century. In the 19th century, it housed nearly 200 Aborigines, transported from Tasmania. Within 15 years, most were dead. In the late 20th century, it was home to a thriving fishing industry with 26 boats and 3 factories. In the 21st century, there's a couple of fishermen left and no processing factories. The island's only cray boat sits alone in the picturesque Killiecrankie Bay in the island's north. Today, locals and tourists are the main people dropping a line. About 5,000 tourists visit the island each year. The tourism industry is growing slowly, but it's beef and lamb production that is the backbone of the island economy. Wallaby may one day catch up to the more mainstream exports. Either way, farmers are determined to get Flinders Island back on the economic map.